Before I came here, my life felt like a cassette tape playing on a loop, slowly demagnetizing until all that remained was a distorted hiss. I was living in the city, working a mid-level data analyst job that required just enough brain power to keep me awake, but not enough to keep me engaged. I lived in a shoebox apartment where the walls were thin enough to hear my neighbors hacking, cough every morning at 5:30 a.m., and the muffled sounds of their arguments every night at 10. I was 32 years old, and I felt ancient. It wasn't a dramatic midlife crisis with sports cars and affairs. It was a slow, gray erosion of the soul. I was drowning in noise, the traffic, the endless notifications on my phone, the meaningless chatter in the break room, yet I had never felt more profoundly alone. The decision to leave wasn't impulsive. It was a desperate, calculated attempt to save myself from total emotional collapse. I needed silence. I needed to exist in a place where my actions had a tangible, immediate consequence, even if it was just flipping a switch. I found the listing on an obscure government contracting board I'd stumbled upon during a 3 a.m. insomnia scroll. They needed a monitor for seismic station Delta 9. The requirements were minimal: basic technical competence, the ability to pass a psychological screening, and a willingness to endure extreme isolation for 6-month rotations. The pay was absurdly high, likely because no one in their right mind wanted the job. I applied within 10 minutes. 3 weeks later, I was standing on a gravel airstrip in the deepest heart of the Alaskan interior, watching the small bush plane that dropped me off become a speck against the overcast sky. The silence that descended after the engine faded was a physical weight. It pressed against my eardrums, thick and absolute. I was surrounded by an endless, monolithic expanse of black spruce trees, a dense carpet of ancient forest, broken only by rugged, snow-dusted peaks in the far distance. The air smelled sharp of resin, cold mud, and ozone. Station Delta 9 was a brutalist concrete bunker, partially sunken into a granite ridge, designed to withstand everything from earthquakes to bears. It was functional, sterile, and aggressively ugly. Inside, it hummed. That was the first thing I noticed. A constant, low-frequency vibration from the server racks and the geothermal generator that powered the facility. It wasn't noise. It was the sound of isolation. My mentor for the 2-week handover period was a man named Silas. He was a fixture of the place, a man whose skin looked like cured leather, and whose eyes seemed permanently focused on something 1,000 yards away, even when he was looking right at you. He didn't speak much, and when he did, his voice was rusty, like a hinge that hadn't been oiled in years. "There's coffee in the mess. Don't drink the tap water without boiling it first. The filter's been acting up since '08, was the extent of his greeting. The routine was mind-numbingly specific, exactly what I had craved. My job was to babysit an array of hypersensitive seismographs and hydrological sensors buried kilometers deep in the surrounding bedrock. The station monitored microtremors, groundwater displacement, and deep earth acoustical anomalies. Most of the work was automated, sending encrypted packets of data back to some nameless agency in Washington. My role was fail-safe. If the satellite uplink went down, which it did, frequently due to atmospheric interference, I had to manually log the readings onto magnetic tape drives. I was a human backup generator for data. My days settled into a rigid structure. Wake up at 5 o'clock, Check the generator status. Brew coffee. At 6 o'clock, sit at the main console, a curved bank of glowing CRT monitors that looked straight out of the Cold War. Review the overnight logs. Verify sensor integrity. Then the long, empty stretch until the 14 o'clock check. I filled the time reading the physical books I'd brought, working out in the small gym area, or just staring out the triple-pane reinforced windows at the unchanging wall of trees. Silas walked me through the procedures with mechanical efficiency. He showed me how to calibrate the needles on the analog seismographs, how to reboot the temperamental main server without wiping the local cache, and how to secure the heavy blast doors at night. He was a good teacher, but there was a tension in him, a rigidness in his shoulders that never seemed to relax. He moved through the station like someone walking on thin ice, placing each foot with deliberate caution. It was on the 5th day that he gave me the other rules. We were in the control room, the green glow of the radar sweep illuminating his craggy face. He handed me a laminated sheet of paper that looked much newer than the rest of the station's manuals. Standard operating procedures are in the binder, he said, tapping the thick black volume on the desk. These are for living here. I took the sheet. It held 5 simple instructions typed in plain font. 1. Always verify the outer airlock seal is green before opening the inner door, even if the sensors say the area is clear. Makes sense, I thought. Bears extreme cold. 2. Do not use the subterranean storage level, level B3, after 20 o'clock hours for any reason. 3. If the analog seismograph needle, Unit 4, begins vibrating horizontally instead of vertically, immediately turn on the external floodlights and wait 30 minutes before logging the event. 4. Keep the blinds in the sleeping quarters closed between dusk and dawn. Do not look out. 5. If you hear knocking on the outer hull, do not acknowledge it. It is thermal expansion of the concrete. I looked up at him, a skeptical eyebrow raised. Thermal expansion causes knocking? And what's with the horizontal vibration on Unit 4? That's physically impossible for that model of seismograph. Silas didn't blink. He didn't even look at me. His gaze was fixed on the darkened window above the console, reflecting our own distorted faces. You came here to get away from the world, didn't you, kid? He said quietly. His voice was devoid of inflection. Out here, the world works differently. The isolation, it bends things. Protocol isn't about understanding why. It's about maintaining the baseline. You follow the list, you finish your 6 months, you go home with a fat bank account. You question the list, things get ... complicated. He turned and walked out of the control room before I could ask anything else, leaving me alone with the humming servers and the laminated paper. I read it again. The rules felt arbitrary, almost superstitious, like throwing salt over your shoulder. But Silas was the least superstitious person I'd ever met. He was pure pragmatism. If he said these rules were necessary, I had to assume there was a practical, perhaps bizarre geological or structural reason for them. I tucked the list into my pocket, deciding to humor the old man. Silas left 3 days later on the supply helicopter. His departure was as unceremonious as his arrival. He just nodded at me, shouldered his duffel bag, and walked out into the rotor wash. As the chopper lifted off, banking sharply over the tree line, I felt a sudden, intense pang of anxiety. The tether to civilization was gone. I was truly alone now. The first week solo was everything I wanted. The silence was a balm. My brain felt like it was finally decompressing. I followed the routine. I followed the special rules, even though they felt ridiculous. Every night at dusk, I closed the thick blackout blinds in my small sleeping quarters. I stayed out of level B3 after 8, which wasn't hard as it was just a damp, echoing concrete cavern filled with rusted spare parts. But the isolation began to change texture. It stopped being an absence of noise and started becoming a presence in itself. The silence wasn't empty. It was expectant. It started subtly. I would be reading in the mess hall, and I'd get the sudden, intense sensation of being watched from behind. I'd whip around, but there was only the stainless steel counter and the coffee machine. Other times, while working at the console, the hairs on my arms would stand straight up, the air suddenly charged with static electricity, thick and metallic tasting. The Geiger counter on the wall would click rapidly for 3 seconds, then stop. Then there was the forest. When I looked out the windows during the day, the trees seemed to have moved. Not significantly, just a shift in perspective, a narrowing of a path that had seemed wider yesterday, a grouping of pines that looked denser than I remembered. I told myself it was cabin fever, the mind playing tricks in a static environment. I was projecting my own restlessness onto the landscape. The first real incident happened on my 12th night alone. It was 2:15 a.m. I was awake, wrestling with a bout of insomnia that had followed me from the city. I was lying in my bunk, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rhythmic thrum, thrum, thrum of the geothermal pump deep below. The blinds were drawn tight according to rule number 4. Suddenly, a sound cut through the mechanical hum. Tap, dot, 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 tap, dot, dot, tap. It came from the far wall, the one that faced the exterior wilderness. It was slow, deliberate, and incredibly distinct against the concrete. It didn't sound like metal contracting in the cold. It sounded like bone striking stone. My heart hammered against my ribs. I froze, remembering rule number 5. If you hear knocking on the outer hall, do not acknowledge it. It is thermal expansion. I lay perfectly still, barely breathing. Tap, dot, 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 tap, dot, dot, tap. It was louder this time, closer to where my head lay. It wasn't random thermal popping. It had a rhythm. It felt intelligent. It felt impatient. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself to rationalize it. The temperature outside was 40 below zero. The concrete was just settling. That's all it was. The tapping stopped. I let out a shaky breath, my body sagging with relief. I lay there for another 10 minutes, waiting, but the only sound was the comforting mechanical thrum of the station. I finally started to drift off, convinced my nerves were just frayed from the new environment. Then, something brushed against the outside of the wall. It wasn't a tap. It was a long, slow scrape, like something massive and rough dragging itself along the length of the bunker. The sound traveled from the foot of my bed towards the head, heavy and wet. It lasted for an agonizing 10 seconds, a continuous, slithering abrasion against the reinforced concrete. It stopped directly behind where my head was resting against the wall. Silence returned, but it was different now. It was heavy, pressurized. And then, very faintly, filtering through 2 feet of steel-reinforced concrete, I heard a sound that made my blood turn to ice. It was a soft, wet inhalation, like something enormous pressing its nose against the wall, trying to smell the meat inside the can. The morning sun over the Alaskan interior offers no warmth. It only offers visibility, which is a mixed mercy. I woke up on the 13th day with a headache that felt like a nail driven behind my right eye. The terror of the previous night, that scraping, that impossible wet inhalation against the concrete, had receded with the daylight, leaving behind a residue of embarrassed shame. Rationality is a powerful drug, and by the time I was pouring my second cup of black coffee, I had almost completely convinced myself that I was an idiot. Thermal expansion. That's what Silas had said. Concrete is porous. It expands and contracts. The sound of air escaping or being sucked into microscopic fissures as the temperature swung from -40 to -10 could easily sound like a gasp. The scraping? Ice sheets shifting on the roof. It was simple physics. I was a data analyst, for God's sake. My job was to find patterns in chaos, not to invent ghosts in the machine. I decided to prove it. At 8 o'clock, armed with a heavy flashlight and a tiered warmth suit, I initiated the airlock cycle to inspect the outer perimeter. I needed to see the blank snow. I needed to see the absence of tracks to settle my racing heart. The air outside was sharp enough to freeze the moisture in my nose instantly. I walked the perimeter of the bunker, the snow crunching loudly under my thermal boots. I reached the section of the wall behind my sleeping quarters, the spot where the scraping had ended. I expected to see nothing, or perhaps jagged lines of ice that had slid off the roof. What I found was ambiguous. There were no footprints, no paw prints of a bear or wolf. The snow bank banked against the concrete was smooth, but it was too smooth. It looked like someone had taken a hot iron and pressed it against the snow, melting the top layer into a glass-like sheet of ice that mirrored the gray sky. It wasn't a natural accumulation. It looked fused. I touched the concrete wall. It was cold, brutal, and solid. There were no scratch marks. Wind, I muttered aloud, my voice sounding small and dead in the vast open air. Wind shear and melt freeze cycles. I went back inside, locking the heavy steel door with more force than necessary. The days that followed were a study in forced normalcy. I threw myself into the work. I reorganized the server file structure. I calibrated the sensors with obsessive precision, but the station itself seemed to be fighting me. The isolation wasn't just quiet anymore. It was heavy. The air inside the bunker felt denser, harder to pull into my lungs. I began to find things. It started with the logs. The official logs were digital, stored on the main server. But Silas, being old school, had kept handwritten journals in the maintenance drawer of the console. I found them while looking for a spare fuse. They weren't official reports. They were rambling, disjointed notes written in a cramped, jagged hand. Most of it was technical shorthand, but nestled between readings of tectonic plate shifts were sentences that made my stomach turn. October 14th. The mimicry is getting better. It sounded like the generator fan belt today. Nearly opened the hatch to check before I remembered the belt was replaced last week. November 2nd. Do not trust the geometry of the tree line. The distance is variable. December 10th. It knows I'm leaving. It's testing the door seals. The hunger is palpable through the walls. I slammed the book shut. Silas was crazy. That was the only explanation. The isolation had cooked his brain. He was a paranoid old man who saw monsters in the mechanics. I shoved the journal back into the drawer, determined to ignore it, but the station wouldn't let me ignore it. Small incidents began to pile up, chipping away at my resolve. I would set a wrench down on the workbench, turn to grab a bolt, and when I turned back, the wrench would be gone. I'd find it hours later, sitting in the middle of the hallway floor, perfectly aligned with the axis of the corridor. The plumbing started to act up. The water in the shower would fluctuate violently between scalding hot and freezing cold, but only when I had my eyes closed to rinse my hair. Every time the water temperature dropped, the pipes would groan a low, mournful sound that sounded vocal. Whim. And then there was the issue of the 16 o'clock check. Every day at 4 p.m. I had to verify the satellite uplink integrity. This involved listening to the raw audio feed from the dish to check for static interference. Usually it was just white noise, cosmic background, radiation, and atmospheric hiss. On the 17th day, I put the headphones on. The hiss was there, steady and rhythmic, but buried deep within the static, at the very threshold of hearing, there was a pattern. It wasn't random. ... I cranked the volume knob, my hand trembling slightly. The sound sharpened. It wasn't just breathing. It was a voice pitched down so low it was almost subsonic. It was mumbling something over and over again. Buried in the electronic snow, I applied a high-pass filter on the console to strip away the bass. The voice became tinny, distant, but intelligible. ... verify the seal, ... verify the seal, verify the seal, ... It was my voice. I ripped the headphones off and threw them onto the desk. I scrambled back, my chair screeching against the linoleum. The room was silent, save for the hum of the servers. I stared at the headphones as if they were a venomous snake. Interference, I whispered, my voice shaking. Signal bounced back. A recording loop. But I knew I hadn't recorded that. I had never said those words into the system. That night, the paranoia set in properly. I couldn't sleep. I sat in the control room, the green glow of the monitors washing over me, watching the darkness press against the reinforced glass. The reflection of the room in the window made it impossible to see outside, but I felt exposed. I felt like I was in a lit aquarium, surrounded by a dark ocean filled with things that could see me perfectly. I pulled out Silas's list of rules again. My eyes drifted to rule number 3. If the analog seismograph needle, Unit 4, begins vibrating horizontally instead of vertically, immediately turn on the external floodlights and wait 30 minutes before logging the event. I looked at Unit 4. It was an antique piece of equipment, a drum and stylus seismograph encased in glass. It measured vertical ground displacement up and down. The needle was suspended on a weighted hinge that literally could not move side to side without breaking the mechanism. It was physically impossible for it to record horizontal motion. I watched it. The needle was tracing a steady, flat line, ticking along with the rotation of the drum. Tick, dot, tet. Tick. I must have dozed off in the chair, exhausted by the adrenaline dump. I woke up to a sound that was wrong. It wasn't a loud sound. It was the sound of friction. I snapped my head up. Inside the glass case of Unit 4, the needle was screaming. It wasn't moving up and down. It was vibrating violently from left to right, scratching against the paper, tearing through the sheet. The metal arm was bending, shuddering under a force that shouldn't exist. It was trying to write something, or perhaps it was just reacting to a vibration that didn't move through the earth, but through the air. Scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. The sound was nauseating. It sounded like teeth grinding. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Rule number 3, I didn't think. I didn't rationalize. The impossible was happening right in front of me. I lunged for the control panel and slammed my hand down on the bank of switches marked external floodlights. Clunks EZCZT. The high-voltage halogens outside roared to life. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for, what? An explosion? A scream? Nothing happened. I forced myself to look at the seismograph. The needle had stopped instantly. It sat there, bent slightly to the left, motionless. The paper was torn to shreds. I looked up at the monitors that displayed the external camera feeds. The floodlights had turned the pitch-black forest into a stark, high-contrast nightmare of white snow and black shadows. I scanned the screens. Camera 1, the main gate, empty. Camera 2, the generator housing, empty. Camera 3, the rear tree line. I froze. The tree line at the rear of the station was supposed to be 50 yards away. It had been 50 yards away when I arrived. It had been 50 yards away yesterday. On the screen, the wall of black spruce trees was ... closer, much closer. They were standing perhaps 20 yards from the concrete wall, and they didn't look right. In the harsh glare of the halogen lights, the bark looked wet. The branches didn't sway in the wind. They held completely still, like a person holding their breath when a light is shined on them. I leaned closer to the monitor, squinting. There, in the gaps between the trunks of the front row of trees, the darkness wasn't empty. There were shapes, vertical, pale shapes that looked like the spaces between the trees, but they had texture. They had ... rigidity. As I watched, the floodlights flickered once. Just a millisecond of darkness. When the image stabilized, the trees were exactly where they were supposed to be 50 yards back. The pale shapes were gone. I sat back, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't clasp them together. I looked at Unit 4 again. The needle was still bent. That part wasn't a hallucination. The machine was broken. I realized then that Silas hadn't been superstitious. He had been terrified. The rules weren't about keeping the station running. They were about keeping me from seeing something I wasn't supposed to see. Or perhaps they were about letting the things outside know that I was awake, that I was watching, that I knew the game. I grabbed the logbook, not the official one, but Silas's tattered journal. I flipped to the back, searching for anything about Unit 4. I found a single entry, scrawled in red ink, underlined twice. Unit 4 does not measure Earth movement. It measures proximity. If it moves sideways, they are already touching the walls. A sudden, loud bang echoed from the heavy steel blast door of the main entrance, 50 feet down the corridor. It sounded exactly like a polite, firm knock. The knock on the blast door didn't repeat. That was the worst part. If it had continued, if there had been a frantic pounding or a rhythmic demand for entry, I could have categorized it. Desperation? Aggression? But a single, polite, heavy bang was a statement. It was a notification. I am here. I can touch your shell. I stood in the hallway for an hour, armed with a flare gun I'd found in the emergency locker, aiming it at the steel wheel of the airlock door. My hands were slick with sweat, despite the ambient chill of the corridor. I watched the locking mechanism, waiting for the wheel to turn. It didn't. The sensors outside reported nothing. The cameras showed only the swirling snow, which had picked up intensity, transforming the feed into a chaotic static of white noise. Eventually, adrenaline gave way to exhaustion. I retreated to the control room, dragging a chair against the door, a pathetic, symbolic barricade against something that could seemingly bend steel seismographs with its mind. The next 2 days were a blur of hypervigilance. I stopped sleeping in the quarters. The bedroom felt too enclosed, a trap with only one exit. Instead, I slept in the control room, curled up under the console desk, waking up at every groan of the facility's settling foundation. I needed to understand. The ambiguity was eating me alive. Silas's journal had been a collection of cryptic warnings, but surely there was an official record. A facility this expensive, run by the government, had to have incident reports. I used my admin privileges to dig into the archived personnel files on the server. I bypassed the standard logs and went into the medical psychological evaluations folder for previous rotations. I found Silas's file, status, active, notes, high resilience, mild paranoid ideation within acceptable parameters. Then I scrolled back, 6 months before Silas, a man named Miller. The file was heavily redacted, black bars swallowing entire paragraphs. But the exit interview wasn't. It was a transcript of a radio transmission sent 2 days before his scheduled extraction. Miller, it's not the isolation. I can handle the quiet. It's the repetition. Control, please clarify Delta 9. Miller, it learns. It learned the wind first, then the generator. Now it's learning me. It's practicing my walk. I heard it in the hallway. It walks like I do. It has my limp. Control, you are experiencing auditory hallucinations, Miller. Oxygen levels are normal. Miller, it's not a hallucination if it leaves wet footprints. Send the extraction. I'm locking myself in the comms array. It can't fit in there. It's too ... unfoldable. The log ended there. The official status for Miller was medical evacuation, acute psychosis. But there was a subnote, tagged by a maintenance team that arrived a week later. Main airlock inner seal compromised. Scratch marks on the interior side of the blast door. Suggest personnel locked door from outside. I felt a cold shiver cascade down my spine. Miller hadn't locked himself in. He had locked himself out, or he had been trying to keep something in. The realization that the threat had breached the station before changed everything. The concrete walls suddenly felt paper-thin. The safety I derived from the bunker aspect of Delta 9 evaporated. I wasn't in a fortress. I was in a larder. The escalation began in earnest on the 19th day. The entity stopped being subtle. It began to interact with the station's infrastructure. It started with the lights. In the mess hall, the fluorescent strips would flicker in a sequence. Off dash on dash, off dot dot, pause, dot 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 dot. Off on off. It wasn't a wiring fault. It was deliberate. It was testing the inputs. Then the temperature. The thermostat in the control room was set to a steady 20 degrees Celsius. I watched the digital readout climb to 35 degrees Celsius in seconds, then plummet to 10 degrees Celsius. The vents screamed as the vac system fought to compensate for sensors that were being manipulated by an external force. But the most terrifying display of intelligence came from the radio. I was in the middle of a diagnostic on the water filtration system when the shortwave radio on the console crackled to life. It was tuned to the emergency frequency, usually silent except for scheduled check-ins. "Hey, kid, you there?" My heart stopped. It was Silas. I lunged for the mic, relief flooding my chest, so hot it almost hurt. "Silas? Jesus, Silas, is that you?" "I'm here. Things are happening. I need help." Static washed over the line. Then Silas's voice returned. It sounded ... flat. The audio quality was crystal clear, devoid of the usual atmospheric distortion, which should have been impossible given the storm outside. "Yeah, the rules. Did you check the list?" "Yes." "I followed them," I shouted, gripping the mic. Unit 4 went crazy. I heard knocking. "Silas, what is out here?" "Unit 4, the voice repeated. It didn't sound like a question. It sounded like it was tasting the words. Unit ... 4. Measurements. Proximity. Something in the cadence was wrong. The pauses were in the wrong places. It sounded like snippets of Silas's voice had been cut and pasted together. "Silas, are you on a secure line? Where are you?" "I am." "At the perimeter," the voice said. "The door is stuck. The frost. Come open the manual release, kid. It's cold." I froze. My hand hovered over the door control release. Silas had left on a helicopter. He was in Anchorage or maybe Seattle by now. He couldn't be at the perimeter. And even if he were, Silas would never ask me to open the door. He was the one who gave me the rules. Rule number 1. Always verify the outer airlock seal. "Silas," I said, my voice trembling. "What's the code for the heavy equipment locker?" Silence, just the hiss of the speaker. Then a sound came through the radio. It wasn't a voice, it was a sound I knew intimately. It was the sound of me swallowing. A wet, nervous gulp, amplified 100 times. Then my own voice came through the speaker. Interference, signal bounce back. A recording loop. It was the exact sentence I had spoken to myself in the control room days ago. "Who is this?" I whispered. The radio went dead. I sat there, staring at the plastic casing of the receiver. It wasn't just mimicking sounds anymore. It was recording me. It was building a library. It had tried to lure me to the door using a voice I trusted. It was hunting. That evening, the station attacked me. At 20:45, 45 minutes past the curfew for rule number 2. Do not use the subterranean storage level. Level B3, after 20 o'clock hours, the main power died. The station plunged into absolute darkness. The silence was deafening as the hum of the ventilation and the servers cut out instantly. No, I hissed, fumbling for my flashlight. The emergency red lights kicked in a moment later, bathing the corridors in a bloody, low visibility glow. The console displayed a critical error. Main breaker trip. Geothermal coupling fault. Manual reset required. The manual reset was in level B3. I stared at the screen. It was a trap. It had to be. The entity knew the rules. It knew I wasn't supposed to go down there. It had cut the power to force me into its territory, but I had no choice. Without the main power, the heaters were off. In this climate, the station would freeze solid in 4 hours. The pipes would burst. The life support would fail. I would die of hypothermia before sunrise. I grabbed the heaviest wrench I could find, the flare gun, and the high-lumen flashlight. Okay, I muttered to myself, just a breaker in and out. 2 minutes. I walked to the heavy door marked Level B3. It was cold to the touch. I swiped my keycard. The lock disengaged with a loud clack. I pulled the door open and was hit by a smell that shouldn't exist in a sterile bunker. It smelled like ozone, wet dog, and something sweet like rotting flowers. I shined the light down the metal stairs. The darkness below seemed to swallow the beam. I descended, counting the steps, 1, 2, 3. Level B3 was a labyrinth of pipes and concrete pillars, the foundation of the station. It was vast and shadowed. The emergency lights here were dim, casting long, stretching shadows that seemed to detach themselves from the objects that cast them. I moved quickly toward the breaker panel on the far wall. My footsteps echoed loudly, too loudly. Clang, clang, clang. Then an echo came back. Clang dot dot, dot, clang dot 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 around, aiming the light into the gloom. Nothing, just pipes and shadows. I know you're there, I yelled, my voice cracking. I know what you are. I didn't know what it was, but shouting felt better than being silent. I reached the breaker panel. The main lever had been physically pulled down. It hadn't tripped. It had been pulled. The metal handle was bent, twisted by immense pressure. I holstered the light, grabbed the lever with both hands, and heaved. It groaned, resisting, then snapped back into the on position. The lights overhead flickered and buzzed to life. The hum of the station returned. I didn't wait to celebrate. I turned to sprint back to the stairs. That's when I saw it. In the middle of the aisle I had just walked down, directly in my path, was a puddle. I stopped, shining the light on it. It wasn't water. It was a thick, black, viscous fluid, bubbling slightly. And in the center of the puddle was a perfect, barefoot human footprint. It was my footprint. I looked at my boots. I was wearing heavy Arctic treads. I hadn't been barefoot in weeks. The footprint was fresh. The fluid was still oozing into the ridges of the toes. Then I heard it. From behind a stack of crates to my left, perhaps 10 feet away. A soft, weeping sound. It sounded exactly like me, crying. It was the sound I made when I had a breakdown in my apartment 3 months ago, alone in the bathroom. It was a private sound, a sound no one else had ever heard. Hoo, please make it stop. The voice was coming from the shadows. I didn't think. I didn't investigate. The primal part of my brain, the lizard brain that knew when it was prey, hijacked my motor functions. I ran. I sprinted for the stairs, my boots hammering against the metal grating. Behind me, the weeping stopped instantly. It was replaced by a sound of heavy, rapid movement. Something with too many limbs, or perhaps no limbs at all, scurrying across the floor and up the walls. Skitter, thumps, slide, skitter. It was fast. Faster than me. I hit the stairs and vaulted up them 2 at a time. I could hear the thing behind me, close enough that I could hear the wet slap of its body against the metal. I reached the door at the top of the stairs, threw myself through the frame. and slammed it shut. I spun the locking wheel just as something slammed into the other side. Boom! The door shuddered violently. Dust fell from the ceiling. I fell back against the opposite wall, gasping for air, the flare gun pointed at the door. Boom! Another hit. The steel groaned, then silence. I lay there for a long time, listening. Slowly, terrifyingly, a sound began to seep through the heavy steel door. It was a voice. My voice. Calm, rational. Did you check the breaker? Is the power back on? You should open the door and check the breaker again. It might trip. It wasn't mimicking me anymore. It was creating a dialogue. It was trying to reason with me using my own logic. I scrambled to my feet and ran back to the control room. I needed to see the cameras in B3. I needed to see what had chased me. I pulled up the feed for the subterranean level. The camera covered the main aisle. I saw the breaker panel. I saw the puddle of black fluid. But I didn't see a monster. I saw the crates where the sound had come from. They were shifted aside. Behind them was a ventilation shaft cover. It had been ripped off the wall. The shaft was small, maybe 2 feet wide. I stared at the screen, the blood draining from my face. That ventilation shaft didn't lead outside. It led up. It snaked through the walls of the facility. It led directly to the vent grill above the main console where I was currently sitting. I slowly looked up. The vent above my head was dark, but as I watched, a single drop of thick, black fluid dripped from the grill and landed on the desk in front of me. The drop of black fluid on the console didn't behave like liquid. It didn't splash or spread. It sat there, a shivering obsidian bead on the brushed steel, holding its surface tension with unnatural rigidity. I didn't scream. The time for screaming had passed in the basement. I was in a state of cold, crystalline shock, a survival fugue where the brain disconnects from the emotion of terror to focus entirely on the mechanics of living. Flip. A second drop landed. I rolled backward in my chair, the wheels screeching against the linoleum, just as a stream of the viscous matter poured from the vent grill. It hit the console where my hands had been seconds ago. It hissed as it touched the electronics, sending up a plume of acrid chemical smoke. The smell was overpowering burning plastic, mixed with that sickly sweet scent of rotting flowers. I scrambled to my feet and backed toward the heavy door of the control room. Above me, the ventilation shaft groaned. The metal ductwork was vibrating, bulging outward as something massive and malleable forced its way through a space meant only for air. Scree thump. It was heavy. The ceiling tiles buckled. I hit the door release and stumbled into the corridor, sealing the control room behind me. The magnetic locks engaged with a heavy thud. I was cut off from the cameras. I was cut off from the radio. I was cut off from the sensors. I was blind in the belly of a concrete beast that was being digested from the inside out. Where to go? The quarters were a death trap. The basement was its nest. The exit? The main airlock was at the end of the long corridor, but the atmospheric sensors earlier had indicated a whiteout storm. If I went out there without a plan, I froze. If I stayed here, I was absorbed. I needed a weapon. Not the flare gun that was a toy against this. I needed information. I remembered the black binder. Silas had tapped it on my first day. Standard operating procedures. But he had also said, if the needle goes sideways, the rules change. The binder was in the control room. I had locked it in with the thing. Think, I hissed, hitting my own helmet with my fist. Think, damn it. The server room. The server room was an independent ecosystem. It had its own cooling, its own fire suppression system, and crucially Silas's legacy terminal. He had mentioned once in passing that he kept a hard backup of the station schematics on a disconnected drive in the server rack in case the Chinese hacked the satellite. I ran. The corridor lights were flickering violently now. The station's power grid was fluctuating, pulsing like a chaotic heartbeat. As I sprinted past the mess hall, I heard the coffee machine brewing. Gurgle, hiss, drip. It sounded normal, which made it terrifying. The entity was multitasking. It was running the station while it hunted me. I reached the server room, swiped my card, and threw myself inside. The room was freezing, kept at a constant 16 degrees Celsius for the machines. The roar of the cooling fans was deafening, a wall of white noise that masked the sounds of the station. I wedged a heavy tool chest against the door. It wouldn't stop the entity, but it might buy me seconds. I went to the legacy terminal at the back of the room. It was an old machine, air-gapped from the network. I booted it up. The green cursor blinked. I searched the directories, schematics, maintenance, payroll. Then I found a folder simply labeled Protocol_Omega. It was password protected. Silas, I whispered. You paranoid bastard. I tried the obvious. Delta 9. Incorrect. Silas. Incorrect. I closed my eyes, visualizing the mentor. The way he looked at the horizon, the way he moved, the rules. Rule number 5. Do not acknowledge. I typed, ignore. Access denied. I thought about the nature of the rules. They were about denial, about maintaining a baseline, about not letting the outside in. I typed, static, access granted. The screen filled with text. It wasn't a manual, it was a manifesto. A suicide note that had been updated by every station monitor for the last 20 years. I read, and as I read, the floor beneath me seemed to drop away. ENTRYO44. Silas, if you are reading this, the containment has failed. You have likely seen the horizontal vibration. You have likely heard the knocking. You think it's a monster. It is not. It is a biological echo. The bedrock here is 4 billion years old, Precambrian, before eyes, before ears, before defined life. We built the station on top of a pocket of undefined matter. It is a protoplasmic soup that mimics the dominant energy patterns around it to achieve stability. It has no shape. It craves shape. It has no voice. It craves frequency. The rules were not to protect you from it. They were to starve it. When you look at it, you collapse its wave function into matter. When you listen to it, you teach it language. When you fear it, you give it the behavior of a predator, because that is what you expect. You have observed it too much. You have acknowledged the knocking. You fed it. Now it has a definition, and its definition is you. I stared at the screen, the green text burning into my retinas. It wasn't a demon. It wasn't an alien. It was a mirror, a quantum predator that became whatever the observer feared most. I had been terrified of being stalked, so it became a stalker. I had been terrified of my own isolation, so it used my voice to mock me, and now it was trying to become me physically. If it killed me, it wouldn't just eat me. It would replace me. It would finish the rotation, get on the helicopter, and go back to civilization wearing my face, carrying the hunger of a billion-year-old void into a city of millions. Bang, the door to the server room buckled. The tool chest scraped an inch across the floor. I spun around. The heavy steel door was groaning. Bang! Open the door, a voice said from the other side. It wasn't a mimicry anymore. It was perfect. It had the exact timbre, the exact exhaustion, the exact pitch of my voice. I need to check the servers, my voice said reasonably. The temperature is rising. Protocol demands a manual reset. It was using the rules against me. Go away, I screamed and immediately regretted it. I was engaging. I was acknowledging. Why are you shouting? The voice asked, sounding genuinely hurt. I'm just trying to do the job. I'm just trying to be a good monitor. Then the door handle began to turn. Not the outer handle, the inner handle. I watched in horror as the steel lever on my side of the door began to rotate slowly, fighting against the locking mechanism. The metal of the door itself was softening, rippling like disturbed water. A hand, a pale, five-fingered hand, was pushing through the solid steel, not breaking it, but emerging from it as if the door was birthing it. The hand groped blindly for the lock. It had my watch on its wrist. I backed away, crashing into the server racks. The noise in the room changed. The cooling fans weren't whirring anymore. They were whispering. Whir SSS dash, verify dash SSS dash, SSS dash, seal dash SSS dot. The entity was in the electricity. It was surrounding me. I looked around frantically. I needed to escape, but there was no other exit. The server room was a dead end. Wait, the cooling ducts. The server racks were cooled by a massive intake system that pulled freezing air directly from the outside, filtered it, and blasted it into the room. The intake vent was on the ceiling, a large industrial grate. It was too high to reach. The hand on the door had fully emerged now. Following it was a forearm, then a shoulder. It was like watching a 3D printer made of meat and bone working in overdrive. A face was pressing through the steel surface. My face, but the eyes were wrong. They were just white spheres, no irises, no pupils. It hadn't learned those yet. I am almost finished, the thing said. Its mouth didn't move, but the sound came from its throat. I just need the eyes. Let me see you. I grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall. Don't look at it, I muttered. Don't observe it. I aimed the extinguisher not at the thing, but at the server rack behind me, the one controlling the fire suppression system. I smashed the nozzle against the control panel, shattering the glass, and yanked the emergency lever. Ka-rumph! The room was instantly filled with halon gas and chemical foam. It was a blinding white fog. Visibility dropped to 0. I couldn't see the thing, which meant I couldn't observe it. The sound of the door warping stopped. The voice cut off into a confused gurgle. Without visual confirmation, without my fear pinning it into a shape, it was destabilizing. I used the chaos. I climbed the server rack, my fingers slipping on the freezing metal. I reached the ceiling grate. It was screwed shut. I slammed the base of the fire extinguisher against the grate. Once. Twice. The screws sheared off. I pulled the grate down and was hit by a blast of air that was minus 50 degrees. It felt like a knife slashing my face. I hauled myself up into the duct. It was tight, claustrophobic, and pitch black. The wind was howling through it, fighting me. Below me, in the white fog of the server room, I heard a sound that will haunt me until I die. It was the sound of something losing its shape, a wet, slurping collapse, like a tower of mud dissolving in rain. And then a multiplicity of voices, Silas, Miller, me, 100 others screaming in unison, not in pain but in frustration. I crawled. I crawled against the freezing wind, my elbows scraping raw against the galvanized steel. The duct was angling upward toward the surface intake. I crawled for what felt like hours, but must have been only minutes. My fingers were numb. My face was a mask of ice. Finally, I saw a gray light ahead, the intake louvers. I kicked them out. They clattered away into the storm. I pulled myself out onto the roof of the station. The wind hit me with the force of a physical blow. The world was a white void. The blizzard was raging. I was on top of the bunker, exposed, freezing, with no gear, no radio, and a creature beneath my feet that could become anything it touched. I looked toward the helipad. It was buried in snow. I looked toward the edge of the roof, where the maintenance ladder led down to the ground, and then I saw it, standing in the snow down at the base of the station, looking up at me. It wasn't a monster, it wasn't me, it was the station itself. The concrete wall below me was bulging. A massive architectural face was forming in the side of the building. Windows shifted to become eyes. A crack in the foundation opened to become a mouth. The station was waking up. It had absorbed enough definition to understand that it was the body and I was the parasite. I scrambled back from the edge, slipping on the ice. The PA system on the roof, the massive horn speakers used for storm warnings, crackled to life. The voice was deafening. It rolled across the forest, shaking the snow from the trees. "Rule 6, the voice boomed. It was my voice amplified to the decibel level of a jet engine. "No one leaves until the rotation is complete." The roof began to soften beneath my boots. The concrete was turning into quicksand. I saw the radio tower, a skeletal metal structure rising from the center of the roof. It was the only thing that looked solid. I ran for it. The roof rippled, trying to grab my ankles. I dove, catching the icy metal of the tower ladder. I scrambled up 10 feet, 20 feet, getting away from the living building. I clung to the tower, swaying in the gale. Below me, the station churned. The vent I had exited clamped shut like a sphincter. I was trapped on a needle of steel in the middle of a frozen hell, while the building beneath me tried to figure out how to climb up and eat me. I looked at the satellite dish at the top of the tower. If I could reach it, dot, dot. If I could manually point it, maybe I could send a signal. A signal that wasn't digital. A signal it couldn't intercept. I began to climb. The wind at the top of the tower didn't just blow. It stripped. It was a physical entity, a scouring pad of ice crystals that flayed the exposed skin of my face. I was 80 feet in the air, clinging to a rime-encrusted steel lattice, swaying violently in the heart of an Arctic whiteout. Below me, the station was screaming. It wasn't a mechanical alarm. It was the sound of concrete groaning, of steel rivets popping like gunshots, of the very architecture of Delta 9 rebelling against its static form. The roof, which had turned into a shifting mire of quicksand, was now rising. The flesh of the building, that gray, indistinguishable matter that had mimicked a bunker for 20 years was climbing the tower. I hauled myself onto the maintenance platform at the pinnacle. My hands were claws frozen into hooks. I couldn't feel my fingers. I couldn't feel my feet. The only thing I could feel was the terror, hot and radioactive, in my chest. I crawled toward the satellite dish. It was a massive concave drum facing south, its feed horn glowing with a faint red LED standby light. I didn't have a plan. I had a desperate, half-formed instinct. The entity was a biological echo. It craved definition. It used signals, radio, visual, auditory to build itself. If I used the dish to call for help, I wouldn't be sending an SOS. I would be broadcasting a blueprint. I would be sending the pattern of the entity into the global network. It would travel as data, as a voice, as a signal, infecting every receiver it touched. I reached the base of the dish. I needed to kill it. Not the monster. I couldn't kill the monster, but the bridge. I fumbled for the multi-tool on my belt. My numb fingers fumbled the clasp. The tool slipped. I watched, time slowing down as the silver pliers tumbled through the metal grating, falling down into the white void. "Damn it," I whispered. The sound was snatched away by the wind immediately. Then the tower stopped swaying. The wind didn't die down, but the vibration of the metal beneath me ceased. The chaotic shaking was replaced by a rigid, humming stability. I felt a presence, not behind me, below me. I looked down through the grating of the platform. 10 feet down, clinging to the outside of the ladder, was a man. He wasn't wearing a parka. He wasn't wearing gloves. He was wearing a flannel shirt and jeans, the clothes I had worn on the plane ride over. He looked up. It was my face. But it wasn't the face of a man freezing to death. The skin was flush with warmth. The hair was perfectly styled, untouched by the gale. The eyes were sharp, intelligent, and compassionate. "It's over, kid," the thing said. I didn't hear it over the wind. I heard it inside my head. It was using the bone conduction of the tower, vibrating the metal I was clinging to, transmitting its voice directly into my skull. "You don't have to be cold anymore," it said. It began to climb. It moved with fluid, impossible grace, its hands melding slightly with the steel rungs before releasing them. Rule 6. No one leaves until the rotation is complete, but the rotation is done. We are complete. I scrambled back against the dish, kicking out with my heavy boots. "Stay back," I screamed. "Don't look at me. I don't see you. You aren't real." The thing crested the platform. It stood up barely 5 feet away. It didn't shivering. It smiled a warm, self-assured smile that I hadn't worn in years. "I am more real than you are," it said softly. "Look at you. You're broken. You're tired. You're dying of hypothermia. Your heart rate is 35 beats per minute. You are a biological dead end." It took a step closer. The wind seemed to bend around it, refusing to touch it. "I am the upgrade," it continued. "I have your memories, I have your pain, but I don't suffer from it. I understand it. I can go back to the city. I can live the life you were too afraid to live. I can talk to your wife. I can fix the things you broke. Just let me take the seat." It reached out a hand. "Give me the jacket. I'll take it from here." For a second, a long, seductive second, I wanted to. The cold was agonizing. My lungs burned. The idea of slipping into oblivion, of letting this perfect, strong version of myself take over was incredibly tempting. It offered peace. It offered an end to the loneliness. But then I saw its hand. It was perfect. Too perfect. There were no calluses, no scars. And on the wrist, where my watch should have been, the skin was smooth. It had forgotten the watch. It wasn't me. It was a recording. It was a playback of a man, edited to remove the flaws. And without the flaws, it wasn't human. Rule 5, I croaked, my teeth chattering uncontrollably. The thing tilted its head. There is no Rule 5 up here. Do not ... acknowledge ... The knocking. I squeezed my eyes shut. I didn't just blink. I clamped them shut with every ounce of strength I had left. I covered my ears with my frozen hands. I curled into a fetal ball at the base of the satellite dish. I refused to observe it. Open your eyes, the voice said. It sounded commanded now. Look at me. Give me shape, I hummed. I hummed a meaningless, discordant tune to drown out the voice. I am losing cohesion, the voice shrieked. It wasn't my voice anymore. It was Silas's, then Miller's, then a grinding mechanical screech. Look at me. I need to be seen. I felt heat. A wave of tropical heat washed over me, smelling of ozone and rotting flowers. I felt wet hands grabbing my shoulders, shaking me. Look at me. I kept my eyes shut. I focused on the cold. I focused on the pain in my toes. That pain was real. That pain was mine. You are nothing, I whispered into the darkness of my eyelids. You are just an echo. You are just static. The shaking became violent. I felt slime oozing over my parka. I felt the platform shudder, and then suddenly the heat vanished. The voice cut off into a burst of white noise. I was alone with the wind again. I didn't open my eyes. I couldn't be sure. I lay there, curled in the snow that was piling up on the platform, drifting in and out of consciousness. I waited to freeze. I waited for the heart attack. I don't remember the rescue. I remember noise, rotor blades, a light so bright it burned through my eyelids, hands rough, gloved hands pulling me, a voice shouting, "We got him. He's critical. Get the blanket." I remember screaming when they tried to open my eyes. Don't look at it. They sedated me. I woke up 3 weeks later in a hospital in Anchorage. They told me I had severe frostbite. I lost 2 toes on my left foot and the tip of my right pinky finger. They told me I was lucky. They told me the emergency beacon on the helicopter pad had triggered automatically when the storm broke. They asked me what happened. I told them the generator failed. I told them the fumes made me hallucinate. I told them I panicked and climbed the tower. I lied. Because if I told them the truth, if I described the thing, I would be giving it a shape in their minds. I would be planting the seed. They discharged me a month later. I received the full payout, plus a hardship bonus for the trauma. It was enough money to disappear, and that's what I did. I moved to a small town in the desert, as far away from the snow and the silence as I could get. I bought a house with thin walls. I live near a highway. I leave the TV on 24 hours a day. I need the noise. I need the constant reminder of a chaotic, unscripted world. But I am not okay. Sometimes when the traffic dies down at 3 a.m., I hear things. I hear my pipes groan, and it sounds like a syllable. I hear the house settling, and it sounds like a footstep. and I have a problem with mirrors. I removed every mirror in my house. I shave by feel. I brush my teeth in the shower with my eyes closed, because I'm not sure. That's the part that keeps me awake. That's the slow-burning rot in my gut. On the tower, when I closed my eyes, ... I drifted. I lost consciousness for an unknown amount of time. I know I feel real. I have pain. I have fear. I have these scars, but that thing, it said it had my memories. It said it was the upgrade. It said it could live my life better than I could. What if I didn't win? What if the thing on the tower didn't dissolve? What if in that moment of darkness it simply finished the download? What if it realized that the only way to truly be me was to believe it was me, to adopt my flaws, my fear, my frostbite, so perfectly that even I wouldn't know the difference? I am writing this story to test myself, to see if I can express genuine human emotion, to see if I can create art, something an echo isn't supposed to be able to do. But as I type this, I am looking at my hand on the keyboard. My pinky finger is missing the tip. The scar is jagged and ugly. It looks incredibly real. But just now, for a fraction of a second, I saw the finger twitch, not a muscle spasm. It vibrated, horizontally, and from the other room, the empty room where I keep the door locked, ... Kikwetet. I think the house is settling.